All right, I hereby call the August meeting of the Criminal Justice Coordinating Council to order. Can I have a roll call, please?
James Schlender.
Present.
Lorraine Gouget. Mark Helwig. Gary Hildendorf.
Here.
Tom Hoff.
Here.
Jeff Johnson.
Here.
Cathy McCoy. Present. Doug Rotek.
Here.
Bruce Paquette. Ryan Reed. Jeff Schley.
Yep.
Tweed Schuman. John Yackel. Elaine Smith. Present.
Excellent. We have the meeting agenda in front of us. Do we have compliance with the open meetings law?
The meeting has been noticed to the public and news media as required by section 19.84 of the Wisconsin statutes.
Anyone have any changes to the agenda that we've got in front of us? If not, we shall proceed to public comments. Is there anyone from the public who wishes to speak at this time who is not on the agenda?
Linda Zilmer, I'm sorry.
Yes, Ms. Zilmer, please proceed.
Thank you. You just might want to make an announcement or somehow get the word out that if there are people trying to join from the links from this agenda or the June agenda, that link isn't working, but the May agenda is working. So if they can't join in, they can't hear this, but if you were expecting other people, you might want to send them an email. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the comment. Do we have a working link?
We'll have to research that.
Okay.
We do have the meeting ID, which does work. And we don't know about the link itself.
Do you know if Nikki was trying to get in today? She's in.
I think
She is,
she's
okay.
in.
And
Excellent.
Patrick.
Yeah. Got in.
All right. Very good. Well, we shall proceed. Any other public comments to be heard? Hearing none, consider approval of the minutes from the previous meeting on June 9th. I'd like a motion to approve. Motion to approve the minutes. Do I have a second?
Second.
And a second. Any discussion on the minutes? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, Criminal Justice Coordinator report. Who would like to speak to that?
So I can give the update on our numbers. Right now, we have 99 people on pretrial supervision. We have filed 71 overcapacity memos on people. So again, that's people that were sent to us for pretrial supervision, but we could not supervise them because of our numbers being too high. We have nine referrals from the DA's office for possible diversion. Most of those we've done the assessments and case plans, and we're just waiting to hear back from the DA's office on if they're going to proceed with that. We have 6 on the electronic monitor and 1 on alcohol monitor.
Any questions or comments? Are we using, what are we using for electronic monitors now? Where do we get those?
Justice Point has a contract through Attenti.
Okay,
So Justice Point supplies them, but people that are out on monitors, they pay Huber fees to the jail to cover those costs of their monitoring.
okay, any other questions or comments? We have,
Yeah.
sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
I was just gonna say, so if we're so far over capacity, what's this doing to our jail population?
It's up there. We have 8 in Barron right now. We're probably gonna have to send more.
So alternatively, what can we do to, instead of housing people in jail outside the county, get them back in some type of program and spend the money there versus in the jail?
That is the question.
So does the county have the ability, or do we have the ability, I guess, to make a recommendation to hire additional staff, perhaps through Justice Point? I don't know if that's possible to redo that contract, or if you have additional staff.
So Nikki would probably be able to better answer that, but if there was more funding, then they could hire more people.
Nikki, did you have comments?
Yep, that's correct, what Melissa is saying. We could hire additional staff and we could amend the contract.
Is hiring staff the correct path to go down, or are there other alternatives to?
Well, I think that's part of the plan with applying for the TAD funding, since we're applying for diversion and treatment court, that we would ask for a position to case manage the diversion caseload. So then we could utilize Becky and Melissa both full-time for the pretrial program.
Yes, sir.
Melissa, you had reached out to us with the tribe as far as a follow-up meeting with the governing board, and because we have these same concerns that Ms. McCoy brought up as well. We would like to meet with you as soon as possible, because the tribe would be interested in housing a Justice Point employee at the governing board office with our new court expansion and the disproportionate number of tribal members that are going through court and being incarcerated. We would like to play a bigger role and something that would ensure our people get some diversion programs versus sitting in jail, especially the people that are sitting in jail pre-sentence. Because I know you're short of staff, you can't do the supervise that you like to do on all these people. And we have a whole Bashiki Wellness, and we've got a treatment program set up. We're looking at a transition house. All of this with our new rescue plan money. So we really want to avoid it all whenever we can incarceration, because that's the worst thing for our people. We've been through a lot of historical trauma as it is, and incarceration just disrupts the entire family, the entire socioeconomic status of that person. And I've been on this rant before, but it's very important to us, and I know Lorraine feels the same way. We've had a lot of discussion at the governing board level on how we avoid this. So Lorraine, you want to chime in at all with that?
I think you covered what we've been discussing. And I know there are consequences for behavior. We all know that. But what really bothers us is when things aren't done in a manner because our people do not have proper representation. They do not have things accessible to them that they need to be in the court and to have fair shake at some things. So when people are sitting, like you said, pre-trial, pre-sentence, whatever, and they're sitting, those are the times we want to give them help. We want to get them into some kind of treatment, whatever it is that they need. And to help address that, I think that has a lot to contribute to why those behaviors we see, why we're seeing some of those activities there. But so I know the governing board was looking forward to that meeting, and how can we keep building on this now, because our travel court's growing and we want to help our people. That's what it comes down to. And so I think we brushed on a lot of that. And I know our elders, they came to us too and expressing we want to do what we need to help our people get the help that they need while they're going through all these other court procedures, whatever it is that they're going through, the alternatives, whatever alternatives to keep their diversion, whatever we can to help them. So that's what we're at.
And then the tribe is sitting on a $25,000 invoice to the county to support the Justice Point program. And, it's a tough sell when we're still not seeing any movement in our people being incarcerated. We're still hearing, we had Jeff and Doug out to see us about some complaints that our people had when they were in jail. So we've got to approve these invoices and approve our contribution to the county to support justice. So we have to see something for our money we're investing. That's where we're going.
Well, can I jump in real quick?
I got the sheriff and then Mr. Slendy.
I have a question for Nikki. Nikki, I know that from the onset of our CJCC, we've talked about, coming together with the DA, the judge, and the jail on reducing especially our precept. That's what's really increased recently. And you guys have the expertise and the experience in that area. And we're really dependent and looking at you guys to give us some assistance in that area. Is that something, I don't know if you can respond now, but I encourage you, even in some follow-up discussion or some direction here. Our pre-sentence numbers continue to really climb. That's why our jail is really full. Is there something we can be working together on to reduce those numbers?
If we put some things in place already to move forward on that, going forward with the PSA, and I've been talking to Lieutenant Johnson about access to that so we can start using that assessment and identifying people, putting people out on pretrial. I think with the PSA will help give the judge some guidance on who can be released. And so that we can get more people out on pretrial. If we're awarded the TAD grant and can shift the supervision of diversion to a different position and have Becky and Melissa solely focused on pretrial, I think all of those things will help. So I feel like we're moving in the right direction. I mean, our focus in pretrial supervision is so that we're available to supervise individuals in the community pre-sentence as opposed to them being in jail. But I do want to clarify, it's not my impression, and Melissa, please jump in if I'm incorrect on this, but when we send our overcapacity memo, I don't think the judge is then holding those people in custody. I just think they're being released without supervision.
Yep, that's correct.
Mr. Slender?
All right, so a couple points here. One is this is the results that we're getting is exactly what was intended. And it would be unfair to say that Justice Point needs to do more in order to justify, I guess, either renegotiation or something else, because they've met the need that was there. We knew going in that the capacity for the county was going to be more than what we're able to contract with Justice Point. Second part is we're not going to see any different results because Justice Point isn't the one that's dealing with the meth epidemic. What they're trying to do is alleviate the jail population, which is what they're doing. And so we're not going to see a different result that would be incompatible with what their contract requires. They're hired to provide a service. So what we need to do is we need to be working on the other aspects of what the Criminal Justice Coordinating Committee is supposed to be working on, which is either treatment programs, developing the relationship with CCS, and I guess either the faith-based components, a little bit, Mr. Hilgendorf has been able to provide some relief in terms of what he's done with his programming. If the tribe is reconsidering or is unable to provide the funds that's necessary under the agreement, that's their purview. But what will happen if we lose Justice Point is the capacity for the jail will fill, and then those who are incarcerated, regardless of their political affiliation, will find themselves in jails outside of the county. And then the cost for that will be borne by the county. And it's I don't know, I think the computation, and Mr. Hoff may have this, it's something like 3 times more than what we're spending for Justice Point right now. So we can be penny wise, but we'll be dollar foolish in the application of that kind of analysis. And so I'm hoping that instead of finding out or demanding a specific result, that we're working on a larger scheme going forward. And this committee is asked to meet with the Tribal Governing Board to discuss some of these issues. And if that's still a viable option, then maybe that needs to be explored. I know that the county board has been discussing this on a larger issue because we're working on, the expansion of the court services. So we are taking the necessary steps. What we have is a meth epidemic. And what we have is a lot of people who are being charged out and being afforded their constitutional protections, which is taxing the system. And so we're trying our best to alleviate what the jail population, but it's unfair to categorize that the criminal justice system is unfairly targeting somebody when they're only responding to the issues that are plaguing literally the nation. So it's incumbent upon this committee to be developing a strategy to address this. And we need to be working with the partners. And this is one of my frustrations with the committee, is that we're having an over-reliance on Justice Point, when Justice Point is met and exceeded its expectations. And so I know that we've been trying to get Jason Fleming in to talk about House of Hope, I think is what that was called. And he's still trying to coordinate with the council to get support for his initiatives on the tribal side. Mr. Hilgendorf has been working, in Hayward on trying to find, alternatives to housing and other types of things that he's been doing, but, it's a voluntary program. And I think, we knew this was expensive going in, and we just need to keep a perspective of what we're trying to accomplish going forward. So with that, I will mute.
Sure.
I would just like to say, and I think there's some good points brought up too there, but the one thing that we can't forget is our jail population is what it is too, because we have some very hardworking officers there, not only in the sheriff's office, but the other municipalities, including the LCO Police Department. And that's why our population is there, because those people have been arrested by law enforcement to keep our community safe as well.
Thank you.
And it was never under my impression that we were gonna pay that part that we committed to. We made that commitment. We were gonna see that through. I just think we needed to have more support. I think that's what I understood. So, but you're right, Jim. When it comes to these addictions, every resource we have in our community, we have to pull together everything. That does not fall on this one section. That falls on everything. So we have to both all the way around the county, we have these issues, so we have to keep building on our resources. And I know with Jason and Mark that their plan that they ran into some bumps, but we still want to make that happen. We do have the women's shelter now open. And so those pieces we're trying to pull in any support. So, but any faith-based is important. I strongly believe.
So I'm going to interrupt here, and being in the unique position of being on Zoom, it's really important that people speak to the microphones, because I can't really hear too much what people are saying. I know that everyone's agreeing with me and that they're enlightened by my speech, but I can't hear the feedback.
Very good.
Trying to use my mask in.
So noted. Cathy McCoy.
So I'm wondering, where is the county at with our CCS program?
No.
Good question. We've got some shortages in staff in CBS and juvenile justice. And so like Alicia Carlson is kind of pulled in that direction. I don't know how many they have in CCS currently, but we do have some staffing issues there currently.
I'm just looking at, I think, Jim, you're absolutely right. We need to be looking at lots of different avenues, and Justice Point is only one tool in the toolbox. So I hope the county continues to look at different things through Health and Human Services, through the CCS program, and perhaps other programs that the county needs to initiate in the next budget cycle to address some of these problems.
Yeah, we did talk a little bit in Health and Human Services last evening about certainly these kinds of problems. We talked a little bit about the opioid settlement, proposed settlement that is pending, which could give the county some dollars. It will give the county some dollars to tackle the opioid addictions. And those payments would happen over a number of years. We've got the TAD grant that we're going to be applying for that would allow us, if we are successful in getting that grant, to get some additional programming in. So hopefully there is some funding to tackle these very issues that we're talking about. But I think, it's important, as Mr. Schlender noted, that, Justice Point is here for a function. They're doing a great job at that function, but we've got other spokes in this wheel to get everything put together, which kind of segues into our next topic. The other part of what we're doing besides building a new courtroom for a second circuit court is implementing or re-implementing a drug court, or what's referred to now apparently as a problem-solving court. And we are honored to have with us today the state problem-solving court coordinator, Heather Kierzak.
Yeah.
Good. With us today to give us a presentation on what's involved in getting that problem-solving court up and running. So Heather, I turn it over to you. Yeah, and if you could find a spot with a microphone so that the people that are online could hear you as well.
So I'm Heather Kierzak. I'm the problem solving court coordinator for the state of Wisconsin through the director of state courts office. Before I was in this role, I was the TAD program improvement specialist with the Department of Justice. So I'm very familiar with the TAD grant, how it operates, what the TAD statute has in it, and what these programs need to look like. So I have a ton of information for you, but I've kind of boiled this presentation just into talking about the TAD grant, how to apply, what it means. But if you have any questions on diversion programs, starting treatment courts, all that kind of stuff, I have all that information too. I'm just not going to go over it today. So if you want to go to the next one. Thank you. So the TAD grant is overseen, is the appropriated through Wisconsin statute 165.95. It's an alternative to incarceration grant. It provides funding for counties and tribes across the state to run treatment court programs or to run diversion programs. The big part of the TAD statute is the criminal involvement of your participants has to be driven through a substance use issue. So OWI, the person has to have a substance use diagnosis or a substance use issue. Goal of the program is to improve public safety, reduce jail and prison populations, reduce prosecution and incarceration rates, reduce recidivism, and obviously the biggest goal is to improve everybody's lives and improve the lives of your participants and their families. TAD funding can be used to serve anybody age 17 years of age or older. There's a competitive funding round every 5 years. We're currently in a competitive funding round, which I'll talk more about in just a minute. There is an oversight committee required to receive your funding. You already have a CJCC, so you can check that off your list. You also have to collect a lot of data if you receive a TAD grant, which is reported through the core system, which there's some webinars and things like that that you can watch if you have more interest in learning about what data you need to collect and what the core system looks like. Part of the TAD statute is you do have to provide risk and need assessments and full clinical assessments for your treatment court participants. It's a little bit different for diversion programs, but you still do have to do risk and need assessments for your diversion program. Your services have to be consistent with evidence-based practices, and both programs have to use graduated incentives and sanctions as a piece of their program. There are a few restrictions under the TAD statute. The violent offender restriction. TAD dollars cannot be used to support somebody who's been charged with or convicted of an offense that's considered violent under the statute. It's up to the county or the tribe to determine what a violent crime is. There's a decision tree that I can give you guys that kind of walks you through what that process looks like, but TAD dollars can't be used to support those offenders in your program. You also, sorry. Hearing voices, good. You also can't prohibit participants from using medication-assisted treatment in your programs. There's requirements about what medication-assisted treatment looks like in the statute, but it has to be, they have to be examined by a licensed healthcare provider. The medication has to be prescribed by that provider, and the person is taking the medication as prescribed for a diagnosed substance use disorder. These are just a couple of maps. The map on the left shows TAD in 2007, the counties that were funded. The map on the right is 2020, how many counties or tribes are currently funded. There's currently just over 60 counties and tribes, and I think it's 83, 84 total programs that are funded. If you go to the next slide, this is just a map of all the programs that are funded across the state and the types of programs that they are. All right, so currently we're in a competitive funding round. All counties and tribes, all of the money that has been awarded over the past 5 years goes back into the pot and it gets redivvied out. So all counties and tribes must apply on a competitive basis this year. Currently, the application is not open, but we expect it to be open in the next few weeks. There's going to be close to $7.2 million available across the state. Treatment course can apply for up to $150,000 of those dollars. Diversion programs can apply for up to $125,000 of those dollars. There's a 25% match requirement. So if you are awarded the full $150,000, the county does have to match $50,000 of that. But that can be done through time. So if you have a county employee that's working on the program, their time counts towards their salary and benefits count towards that match. So it's not just a straight out $50,000 check that you have to write to the state or anything like that. There's ways you can match that without that. But and then next year, an additional $2.5 million will be awarded competitively. So there's $7.2 million available this year, and next year another round will occur where an additional $2.5 million will be awarded. That was in the governor's budget this year. So kind of the next steps for you guys, if you're interested in applying for a TAG grant, you can go to the next one. Thanks. The first thing you guys need to do is determine your team. So who's going to run your treatment core program, what individuals are at the table, what if there are individuals that you need to still bring to the table. You need to determine the population you want to serve. I've heard you talk about meth. So are you going to focus on the meth addicted population? Are you going to focus on opiate addicted population? Maybe you have a high number of OWIs, so you're looking at an OWI court. Or maybe you want to encompass all of those folks and look at a hybrid court. You really want to focus on what your data is saying. Data is super important in the TAD application process. You're going to want to determine your model. So drug court, OWI court, hybrid court. Maybe you have a huge veteran population here that you want to focus on veterans issues. And then figure out who's going to complete the grant application. The grant application itself, we'll walk through the parts of the application in just a minute. It's pretty intense. But that website there at the bottom, you can go to that website. I can send it out to all of you so you have it, but it has a plethora of forms, the application, it has the project design table you have to fill out, it has recommendations for what you can use the funding on. It also has a webinar that was conducted about a month and a half ago, walking you through the application process, what's expected to be in the application. And that's also where you can find the webinar on the core reporting system. So your application components are going to include your main summary, which is just a brief project description. Your budget details, really where you're going to spend most of your time figuring out what you're going to use the funding for. So you need to break down salaries, benefits, if you're going to go to any training, travel, that kind of stuff, supplies and operating expenses, if you need to help paying for your drug testing, things like that. If you're going to consult with someone or contract with someone, so if you're going to have Justice Point run your, hire your coordinator, they're going to work as a Justice Point employee and you're going to contract with them. If you're going to contract with a treatment provider to provide specific services for your treatment core program or your diversion program, all that has to be included in your budget. Your budget narrative is just talking about what you're going to spend your money on. Your problem description is where you want to spend quite a bit of time. You really want to have strong data in that statement about why you need this funding. There's $7.2 million available. All of that money is divvied out right now for programs that are up and functioning. So your application is going to have to look really impressive to be able to compete across the state for that limited amount of funding. You're going to have to do a project design table, which is walking through all of the policies and procedures of your programs, what it's going to look like, what population you're going to serve, what policies and procedures you're going to have, how are you going to determine who gets into your program, who's not eligible for your program, all that kind of stuff is included in that. In that project design table, you do have to talk about how you're going to conform to the key components or standards. And I brought a bunch of standards books. You guys are welcome to take one, but this is just for treatment court standards. There's also diversion program standards on the website, on the CJCC website that you can look at if you're going to apply for diversion funding. But you want to make sure that you're pointing out this is how it applies to standard number 1, it applies to standard number 2, and walking through all of these standards in your application. You're also going to have goals and objectives. What are you hoping this program will do for your community? And having numbers in there, we intend to reduce recidivism by 10%, our population, whatever that looks like. Or we want to reduce the jail population by 25%. That's probably a little lofty, but you know, whatever you want those goals to look like, you want to make sure that you're setting SMART goals. So I'm sure you guys have heard that acronym stuff. So, and then depending on which pot you're going to place yourself in, there's 3 tracks for TAD funding. There's planning and implementation, there's implementation, and then there's enhancement. So planning and implementation track allows you 6 months of planning time for your program. So if you're not quite ready to start day 1 with your program, you're going to want to apply in that planning and implementation track. If you're ready to go day 1, then you're going to want to apply for the implementation track. And if you have a program that's already up and running, but you're wanting to get additional funding to enhance that program, you're going to apply for the enhancement track. You also have to list any other funding that your programs are going to get. So if you have any kind of federal funding or things like that. And then you also have to provide a letter of support from this body that you guys are supportive of those programs and supportive of them applying for funding. Like I said, I have a ton of other information and I'm happy to answer questions, or I'm going to be here for a while after because I drove 4 hours to get here. So at least I'm going to sit down for a little bit, but happy to answer other questions that you might have about getting your programs off the ground or what they should look like, or walking through logic models or whatever you want to do. But there's my contact information. There's also Mike Durr at Department of Justice. He took over the TAD Program Improvement Specialist position that I used to have. He's been there about 6 weeks, so he's brand spanking new. So he's kind of trying to keep his head above water right now. But he also is a resource for you guys if you have questions about the TAD grant.
Well, that's a bundle of information.
Yeah, sorry.
Thank you much. Questions, comments for Heather?
So, I'm sorry.
Once the application gets released, they're probably going to give you about 4 weeks to complete it.
Yeah, it is.
But all of the forms and all the information, the entire application document is available on the website. So you can start working on it now, just so you can just plug it into the application once it actually does open. Whoever's going to be actually submitting your grant, you're going to want to get enrolled in eGrants, which is the DOJ system. So you can do that now. You don't have to wait for the application to open to do that.
So does the tribe, they're eligible to apply in the county? So I think people have been working on it. Because we have such a high rate in our county, we're one of the top ones. Incarceration, addiction, suicides, everything.
Yeah.
We're up there.
Yeah.
So we have strong.
Yep, so down in Jackson County, TAD funds Jackson County's drug treatment court, and we also fund the Tribal Healing to Wellness Court for the whole chunk.
We already have a healing to wellness court, and we just got an extension for 1 year, so we already have the funding, so we probably have to wait until the next go on.
Unless you wanted to apply for enhancement.
Yeah.
So you have some changes that you want to make, or you see like a treatment need that's not being met that you need that funding for, but yeah. Another big thing is we can't replace county dollars. So if you, like in the Tribal Healing to Wellness Court, if you already have pieces that are funded, you can't use a TAD grant to replace those dollars.
And Melissa and Becky, we already have a team on this, right? Isn't Nick and
Yep,
Nikki preparing the grant?
I believe already has a draft that she's working on submitting, I believe, to Tom and myself to read over. So she's been on it.
I just spoke to Nikki right before this meeting. Nikki, do you have comments on the process that we're using to do this application?
Yep, so we've pretty much done the narrative piece of the application for both diversion and the treatment court, and I'm going to submit the draft to Tom. We'll need to work on goals and a budget, and then we should be good to go.
Heather, in light of the wonderful conversation we had before your presentation, and you did a great presentation, but any other comments just in general on what would make us successful, or what we should be doing differently or looking forward to in this application that would help us?
No, I think you guys are on some solid footing since you guys already have the diversion program kind of off and running. Data is gonna sell your program, so if there's some way that you've already seen some data maybe from your diversion program that you can use that data to say, this is why we need additional funding to expand this program because we already know it's working. That would be helpful. I had something great to say and it just slipped out.
Mr. Schlender, do you have any comments? We can't hear you if you do.
I do, but I just want to make sure that the Tribal Wellness Court is running independent of what the CJCC's mission is. And it's a different jurisdiction. And if we were going to try to do some kind of using the wellness court to offset some of the people that we had going through the justice system, there would have to be an MOU established. And so I'm hoping that doesn't detract from what we're trying to accomplish, because that wellness court had a different purpose when that grant was first drafted. And that shouldn't be confused with the tribal's efforts to try to alleviate the population that we have that's going through this, to the justice component. So just 2 cents.
I don't think that's gonna be a problem, John.
I would just tell you, if you don't get funded this year, don't get discouraged. Like I said, there's 2.5 million available again next year. So.
Did Sawyer County apply for this before?
I think so. I wasn't around 5 years ago when it opened, so and there's been some little buckets of funding that have come down from the legislature. So every once in a while we'll have another competitive round just because we get a random chunk of money. So there's a website, the DOJ website, they list all their funding opportunities. So check back there.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Thank you, Heather, for coming. And Heather said she would be around after. If we think of other things, we can touch base with her at that time.
I have another question. So who decides how the grants are awarded? Is there a committee?
There is a committee.
And the committee is composed of?
There's representatives from DOJ, state courts, Department of Health, from DOC. I think I hit them all.
So who does the appointments from each one of those groups?
The secretaries.
Okay, thank you. Moving on, we've got precision kiosk update from Michael Knoll. Mike?
I don't have much of a presentation, but I just kind of wanted to come back in and talk a little bit about the kiosk and how it can help it. There were a lot of points that were brought up where you have this great piece of technology over in the vestibule of your jail that can do alcohol monitoring, check-ins, and it can also help your drug testing. So it communicates out via text message and email, and those can be both to supervisors and your clients. Everything is networked together, so if there's another kiosk, we do have some counties that have 2 kiosks. If the reservation, whatever we want one, if that makes it easier for travel, we could discuss that. As far as at the jails, a lot of jails are using this as their Huber work release program as they come back in to make sure they're sober going in. There's a number of counties here in Wisconsin that are using this as a jail depopulation. 25 to 30 people a day go are out in Racine County, and they've got them testing twice daily. And the opposite of if you come in and you blow hot, you go back into jail, or if you miss a test. So it's pretty strict down there, but they have almost 100% compliance as the days go on. You can run multiple programs at the same time. At one point, the CJCC had 50-some people between 5 different programs, testing anywhere from 5 days a week to 1 day a week. The other thing that some people aren't aware of is just the check-in process that the kiosk can do. So that if you just need somebody to come someplace, be accountable, you want to see what they look like, but maybe you're a little bit too short-staffed to have to sit down and talk with everybody. You can have them answer questions right at the kiosk. Do you live at this address? Have you used? Do you need help? You know, whatever those questions may be, a lot of times it's whatever's on the clipboard when they come into the office, they fill it out before they sit down with their supervisor. We make all that electronic right into our system. They can answer the questions. The test can be from free to $3. Just depends on how you want to set that up. When I say free, free would be that it would be free to your client at that session, and then we would bill out for that at the end. So in any county about this size, typically we'll have the sheriff's office, CJCC, Health and Human Services, specialty courts, OWI courts. Everybody has their own silos of people that they're monitoring. And so you're in charge of these people. You don't have to see what's going on with the sheriff. People go to the kiosk when they're told to. And when they're told to, you set that up. So you can tell somebody 2 hours in advance that they need to come in for a test. So they'll get a text message that says at 3 o'clock, you have between 3 and 5 o'clock to report to the kiosk to take an alcohol test or take a drug test or do a check-in and answer some questions. So it's a way to manage a lot of people with very little staff. I mean, we have some parts of the country where we've got 350, 400 alcohol tests being done a day, just in one county. We also have some counties that have completely redone their probation departments. They're letting out their low-level nonviolent. They have to come in every 60 or 90 days. Instead of sitting down with them, they let them just go to the kiosk. You know, do you have questions? Do you have to see your supervisor? And you know, it's been a very successful program. I really just want to come back out and kind of remind everybody that you have this technology here. And if you want to sit down and set up some programs, retrain, maybe see what's there, we're happy to do that. As far as what's the tax of the kiosk on the county itself, I mean, right now it's zero. You guys don't pay a monthly fee. When we first signed the contract, we wanted to see 450 tests or more a month. Diane had it there. It was a very successful program. COVID happened. A lot of things changed. Totally get it. But that's really why I wanted to come back and just say, hey, you guys have this here. You have this technology. It's real easy to do. You know, if you take somebody over the kiosk and you get them registered with their fingerprint, and if they show up when they're told to, if they don't drink, if they do all their check-ins on time, you may never see that person again. So, and you could run all these programs. You don't have to be by the kiosk. Because if somebody does something that I call is an action item, if you missed or failed the test, if you didn't show up for this, then that supervisor is notified and you can take action on that as you choose. You could have different levels of offenders. You know, it really depends on how you want to make it work. So it's there. I just wanted to remind some people that it's there. And if there's any additional training that we can do to come out and help out, we're happy to do that. Yep.
Michael, you said it takes 450 tests a month to be budget neutral. Is that what you're saying?
To be budget neutral is where we like to see it, yes.
Right. And how much
After
per test?
What's that? At $3 per test.
$3.
So it's about 15 tests a day. So we do have some counties where they say we're never going to get to there. Can we, you know, pay forward a little bit to cover those 450? The other thing on the 450 is any testing north of 450, those dollars that are collected, we share 30% back to the county. So those dollars do happen. I mean, there are counties that last year made $15,000 to $20,000.
Yeah, so we had considered putting a second machine out at the reservation, because we had done bond testing out there anyway with our behavioral health department. We did not do that, though, right, Tom? We were scared.
No,
of the
because we weren't,
impact.
yeah, we weren't hitting the minimums on our machine. What kind of utilization are we having now, and what are we using it in?
Justice Point doesn't use it.
Okay.
So, I mean, we could talk with Nikki, like that could be an option, but I wouldn't make that decision.
Yeah, right now, there's nobody from Hayward County, from Sawyer County that's using it. There's about 25 to 30 people that come in from other counties around the state, because they got a cabin here. They're testing here while they're at their cabin. All that information goes back to their supervisor. So it's.
You mentioned Diane, is that Diane's neighbor?
McNamee, yeah.
So nobody placed her or nobody knew or?
Justice Point is the replacement for Diane
for
and the jail person we had. So those two positions were open, which is the funding that we're using for Justice Point.
So
And he
then,
came in 6 months after Diane was out, so it's like we didn't get to meet with Diane to say like, hey, what was going on beforehand.
Yeah, it was tough. I mean, there's nothing wrong with what Justice Point's doing. They're doing a great job. It was a little bit of a messy handover, but we got it figured out. And we're really happy to, we work with Justice Point in other counties. And, you know, it's not a ton of testing, but, you know, for us, it's so easy to set up different groups to allow people to utilize the technology.
yeah,
Well, there's a tool in the toolbox we're not using,
yeah.
major tool. I didn't realize that.
Well, it's currently set up in the jail, so I mean, it's maybe prohibitive for people to go test to see if they got a BAC while pulling up to the police station. I don't know if that's welcoming or how that would be worked out. So we could probably set it up at, you know, maybe like Walmart or, you know, charge a fee or something, put it somewhere so people could have better access.
It's in, Jim, it's in the lobby or the entrance to the lobby that's open 24/7.
At the jail though, or at the sheriff's office, right?
Yes.
See, it's kind of hard to get people who are wondering if they got blood or, you know, been drinking or not to go to the jail to test to see if they have it, because I don't know if that's going to be an incentive to participate or not.
Where did Diane have it before?
Right, same
It's right there.
Right at the same spot?
And we looked, Lorraine, we looked at the Bashiki Wellness Center in our lobby there, of having a reservation, have their own kiosk. But there was concern about we wouldn't be able to afford it and who then would pay for it. But it sounds like it's a great alternative to incarceration, especially pre-sentence, if you can monitor them,
I mean, we're doing
supervise them some way.
over 26,000 sessions a month right now around the country. And that's with over 99% compliance rate. So that's people that are showing up when they're supposed to show up for an alcohol test, a drug test, or a check-in. And it's also saying that they're sober doing that. I had a guy down in St. Croix, we were installing down there. This guy's yelling at me, they put me on your stupid machine. I hate it. I don't even drink. I do nothing. I'm like, okay. I go back a couple weeks later, same guy, kind of giving me this stuff again. It's okay, it happens. Third time I see him, he goes, "That stupid thing." I'm like, "What?" He goes, "It works." Well, what are you talking about? He's like, "I knew because it takes a picture of me and has video that I couldn't come in here high anymore because they're going to come up and grab me." Okay. You know, it's one thing where you're keeping people accountable to showing up. Are there missed tests? Yeah. Are there failed tests? Yes. And it's another tool in the toolbox. It's not a bracelet. It's not a handheld device. It's a way different price bracket too, whether that's to the county to pay or to the individual to pay at the $3.
One thing I would add is the reason why we probably don't have as many people bond testing on alcohol is that the total number of people who are on drug-related pre-bond testing eclipse that number astronomically. We'd almost have to go through another 1,000 more people in order for Justice Point or for anybody else to actually get to the point of measuring it. Alcohol is still the same problem in the county. It's just it's eclipsed by meth and other drugs.
It can be used to notify people to come in for drug testing. You could also have them pay for that drug test at the kiosk using cash or credit, or that test could be free. And obviously, you guys know where those dollars come from as well. So we've built quite a bit of new tech into it. We have a ton more to go. Every time we improve, everybody gets to cross our neck. So even though it wasn't being used very much during the pandemic or any, you guys have continued to get more software to build out programs, to build out different ways of monitoring people.
Sheriff?
The other thing I just want to add to is when we talked about where it was going to be located with Diane and Mike, a couple of the additional factors were to have it in a place that's accessible 24 hours and some kind of security or accountability there, so the machine is less likely to get damaged.
Yeah, and a lot of times too, what you want to do is to take a secondary PBT if somebody does blow hot, because that's going to be your evidentiary test when you go to court. So that's.
And can I also just add that we don't have anybody who just shows up to our office just to test. we provide more than just drug or alcohol testing at our office. They don't just come in to test. They don't just test and leave. We provide more than that.
They used to call colors.
Yep, it's the color code system, so that's exactly what we built into the randomization. And we have a lot of people that might come in between 2 and 3 times, or 1 or 2 times, Monday through Friday. And then they're gonna come in on Saturday or Sunday, so a lot of times they're doing the drug test on the weekend. We'll do another one. You can gather data from the kiosk, what it's saying, what it's doing. And you were talking about different types of data that you can have. We have a ton of data on you guys already, because you have to put in a person's birthday, you have to put in male or female, so you can now go back in and look at different categories of people, different ages, different data points of what's working, what's not. Specific to Sawyer County. You want to look at it across a lot of counties, across the state of Wisconsin.
How long was Diane using it?
About a year.
Before she left, the year before she left?
Yeah.
So do you test when people come back from Huber, when they're working? Do you test in the jail or no?
We have random testing, but we have handheld PBTs and then we have the UA cups that we use. That's also random, yeah.
Would this be advantageous versus you guys having to do the testing? You're there.
6 of 1, really. I mean, usually if it's planned, whoever the deputy is that's bringing the Huber back in will bring the PBT with them. Or if they feel like they smell alcohol on somebody, they'll bring it down to booking and PBT them. You know, and then the Huber deputy, you know, has a system for randomly putting in days of when a Huber is going to be UA'd when they come back from work. So it was installed prior to me taking over as jail administrator, but Diane was bringing people over constantly for it, and that was for primarily, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, but I think it's primarily for alcohol checks.
Yep.
Because I know we did have one guy that was still coming even through the pandemic, because he was still on that order to do that.
So is there opportunities to use this technology more than what we're doing now?
Well, I think before the focus was alcohol, but
Yeah.
it sounds like now you've expanded in that you
Yeah.
can actually test for meth and heroin.
You can, it communicates to the person to come in, and then they're gonna take the drug test by a person. So it's the communication and the recording of it. The kiosk itself does not do a drug test. Sorry, I should have.
That's what I wondered, right? Yeah.
And we get the joke all the time, where do you pee in the side of it? You know, so, but Diane was using it for her sweat patches. So it'd be, okay, you gotta come, you're gonna get your patch on, and 6 days later, you gotta come back in, and it was reminding people to come back in. Health and Human Services, Child Protection used it all the time. You know, somebody's got a drinking problem, I get my kids from 4 to 9 o'clock at night. All right, well, 4:30, you gotta come take a test, and then before 9:30, to make sure that you weren't drinking when you had those children in your custody.
So they're not doing the colors anymore?
Don't need to. So the color code system was a little bit different, because you had to pick up the phone, you had to call that. If your number was called, you had to come in. So this is kind of the opposite of that, because we're using text messaging and email to communicate out to people when they need to come in. So there's no need, because we built the randomization into it. So there's no need to have them call it. There's even a secondary contact if you get a house where somebody doesn't have a cell phone. You can have a secondary contact on there that would also be contacted.
Any additional questions, Mr. Schlender?
None for me.
Comments, Nikki? No, I would just say, I think we're structured a little differently than how Diane was using it. We also have a handheld PBT. We're doing drug testing for people that are on pretrial supervision and in the diversion program. Random testing that Becky and Melissa do in conjunction with their case management visits. So I don't see a need for us to use it right now, at least for pretrial and diversion.
Thank you. Thank you, Michael, for the presentation. Moving on, community services update, LCO Healing Center initiatives.
Mr. Fleming did call just before noon today and said he couldn't make it today, but they plan to be here next month with a more robust report because they're still working on some things.
Okay.
And he asked that the women's shelter representative Elizabeth Rice be added to that agenda as well.
Okay. Greater Hayward House of Hope.
Actually, good things going on there. We have two guys. The first guy that entered the program has been very, very solid, and they are constructing things and learning the woodworking trades, and the community has been very supportive of them and reaching out and providing opportunities for them to go and work. And and we've got another individual staying there, so we can only have room for one more downtown. And the biggest thing, the biggest problem that we see, in fact, I've talked with the mayor, talked with Joel from the city of Hayward Police Department, and is that there are people who obviously don't want to go into a faith-based program that want to have a place to go, but the challenge is that many of them want to continue to use and don't think it's a big deal. In fact, the ones that have come through the men's house there that didn't end up staying there is because they wanted to continue to use. They wanted to go out and smoke pot and think it was okay and things like that. And so what we're looking at is trying to find a house. In fact, we had communicated with probation and parole there about the house that was next to them, Jeff there when he was, but that house has since sold. But the big problem is in all of this is funding, because that was $250,000 for us to have a house that we can house things. And sex offenders have no place to go. Neither one of our programs can take sex offenders. So those are people that are just out there, and where do they go? And so what we need to do is find a place, and if there's all this funding coming in, I would hope that as a county and as tribal entities, we could work together in getting a place that would be a place where people could go, and there would, I don't know if the court system could sentence them there and that they would have to follow work. Because one of the other things we're finding in people that fail, and this is both the men's and the women's house, is they have no structure at all in their lives. They come in and they want to stay up all night and sleep during the day, and it's like, and we want to have structure. And the men's house is good at this, man. They're up at 7:30. There are things, they are going and they are getting structure to their life, and that is something they haven't had. But we need a place that is a little bit more discipline oriented, that would be have some teeth to it, that hopefully the judicial system would be behind it and say, hey, you guys need to go to this place, you need to follow the rules, and we're going to provide education, we're going to provide all these other alternatives. And yes, faith can be a part of it, but it doesn't have to be a part of it. And so this is the challenge that we're facing, and so we need a bigger place to house people, and the churches and the community is supporting both the men's and the women's house very, very well. We're well into the black, which is very, very good. We're not in the red at all, and we should be in the summer with all the things going on. But the big thing is we actually need another place that would house the people I just mentioned that kind of fall through the cracks. We need a larger place so that we could have some more beds for people to stay in.
Okay.
So that kind of does the men's and
Very good. So that's covering Reflections Women's Housing as well.
yeah.
Questions, comments there?
Jerry, what is are you full now, or do you have openings? Or?
There's one opening at the men's house, and right now I think there's one at the ladies' house. And that's just because someone left. And actually they left, it was good. They had a job and their family was willing. They felt that they were stable enough. And that's good. In fact, that was out on the res. So she got a job at the C-store and felt very stable, and she went back home. And that's half the challenge. Families have had it up to here. In fact, I got called by a tribal member the other day to go visit someone who's basically, it's about doing himself in with his addiction. And he didn't think he had a problem, so he didn't want to talk to me. So that is another part of the challenge. And the family is like pulling their hair out. And this is across the board. This is what happens. People just don't, a lot of times in addictions, don't think that they have problems when everyone around them thinks that there's a problem.
Disease, yeah, that's part of the sickness.
Part of the disease.
Yeah.
That you mentioned, the sex offenders, and you're right. Because our housing authority, they have their regulations. All the programs, they have their regulations, all the things that are so hard, the probation pro, those guys have to find placement for these individuals. They're having a hard time finding placement. They cannot be around children. I mean, there's so many barriers there. But you're right, we need a place for those individuals as they are continuing their journey for rehabilitation and get the help they need for them to be. So I hear you, Matt.
Okay, thank you. Next item on the agenda, potential ARPA funding uses. As we talked before, we've had this on a lot of agendas. The ARPA funding, the county got $3 million in funding. I believe the tribe got a substantial amount of ARPA funding as well. So as we look at potential uses of those funds, potentially they could be used for some of these activities, although it's hard to fund ongoing operations with these one-time funds. But if there are uses we can come up with using that funding, that's another alternative. Future agenda items. Anyone have anything else they want to place on the agenda for next time around?
Well, I'd just like an update from Justice Point on how we're coming with the TAD grant.
Yes.
Somewhere.
Yep. We should have had a draft of that for this month, but that'll be for next month for sure. So we'll get that on the agenda. Anything else noted?
Question about the ARPA funding. So who is kicking around ideas, or what is the county using to prioritize ideas, or what is the process, I guess, that the county is using to evaluate where that money is going to go?
Well, so far we haven't had a process other than waiting for the final rules to come out. The interim rules are out. They've updated those. I think the last update to that was July 19th. So, I think the basics are there, but, waiting to make sure that we get the final rules before we proceed too much further. We did do 2 broadband grant applications that would commit some of those funds. We haven't heard if those applications are approved yet by the PSC. But other than that, we're still working through that process. We have until the end of 24 to commit those funds and the end of 26 to spend the funds. We have half of that money in the bank currently, and we'll receive the other half next year at this time.
But it's not everything we send.
But a follow-up question, once the county board decides on some direction, or the committees decide on some direction, would it behoove the county to have a public hearing or a public informational meeting that these are the things we're looking at or proposing at X amount of cost? What does the community as a whole feel is a priority for this money?
Yeah, and I think, part of that discussion needs to happen around what are the rules, because somebody could come and say, well, I think we need better highways. Well, highways isn't one of the things that you can fund. So once we determine, the categories of things and the potential uses, and then have some kind of public process to prioritize. Otherwise, you get a lot of things that probably are not going to be productive in the long run. Okay, any other matters for discussion? We had public comment in the beginning. Did I miss you? Did you have any comments for us? All right.
Did you want to say anything, Deb?
I'll talk to council afterwards.
Oh, okay, great. Deb is one of our tribal elders, and she also sits on our public safety committee. So I invited her to this meeting, knowing that we had some good initiatives and progress.
Very good.
I wanted to hear that.
All right. Thank you for coming. All right.
When are we going to meet again? Are we going to
Ah,
meet next
that's a
month, or are
good
we going to wait 2 months like we were doing?
I think we better meet next month since we've got that application that we need to review. So let's plan on next month. Does somebody have a calendar ready to roll on?
Second Wednesday would be September 8th.
September 8th at noon. Going once, going twice. September 8th at noon. 12:05 will be the next. Yeah. 12:05 for you.
No, no, no.
Someone was like, where's
11:55.
Okay, and Heather is still around if you've got questions or comments for Heather. Otherwise, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Amen. Thank you.